Welcome to the third of 5 conversations I had at the Travel Bloggers Conference TBEX in the Czech Republic recently. Today we meet Jennifer from Jen on a Jet Plane. This episode is brought to you in part by Hotels25.com. It's a website that helps you find the best prices on hotels and guest houses and hostels around the world. Hotels25.com, best price guaranteed.
This is the Radio Vagabond podcast.
So Jen, tell me a little bit about yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
Well, I am a solo female travel blogger, ex-lawyer. I quit my job recently to pursue traveling and writing full-time, and I write about budget travel and how to go around the world on short trips, even if you're by yourself and or single.
And you wrote a book?
I did. It's called The Affordable Flight Guide. I had found a $38 flight to New Zealand and a $16 flight to Ecuador, and people kept asking me, how are you getting these amazing deals? So I thought that I should put it all together in a book and try to sell it on Amazon, and it's been doing pretty well.
But you say that your background is you're an attorney and then you quit that to travel.
Yes, so this all started because I was approaching my 30th birthday and I was just working very hard, I think in the way that most Americans do. They work themselves to death, like if there's a medal for it. And I just decided that instead of sitting there kind of frustrated, working a lot, and dealing with the online dating crisis that we're all going through nowadays, that I should try instead to just divert my energy and try to put myself into something more productive. So I set out to take 12 trips in 12 months, and I ended up taking 20 trips because I kept finding all these cheap flights, and I thought, I'm not going to turn down a trip to Cuba for $190. I'm going. And I managed to just fit it in within long weekends and just taking, the occasional kind of sick day here and there, quote unquote, one or two, not abusing the process, but just trying to make the most of the time that I was given and the leave that I have that most people leave on the table and don't really use. A lot of Americans don't use their vacation time. So I made the most out of that. I ended up taking 20 trips, and I realized that I was much happier traveling the world, having these experiences, meeting other people than I was just sitting in my office kind of fighting for a living every day.
So how much do you travel now?
So now I've been traveling mainly for conferences. So since I stopped my job, I've been to 3 different conferences around the world, around Las Vegas, and now here in the Czech Republic. I'm going to have one later this year in upstate New York. So wherever that is, since it's tax deductible, so we can kind of keep that in mind. And that was the main purpose. And I'll travel whenever there's a good opportunity. I'm not opposed to short day trips or weekend trips or even just exploring my own backyard or area. I relocated to upstate New York, and I've been discovering some of the areas around there that wouldn't have necessarily appealed to me if I had still been living in Florida. And I've discovered so many beautiful things to see there. So there really is a lot to see. You can travel even if you're not constantly flying all over the place.
But you were born in Puerto Rico?
Yes, I was. So a lot of people call me like that feisty Puerto Rican woman. So it's wonderful, and I love Puerto Rico. It's actually really a shame that the tourism has taken such a hit after the hurricanes last year. But I was born there. I lived there till I was 6, and then I moved to the States just because my mother wanted to study here and have a better life. She was actually the first person in her family to graduate from college. I'm the first attorney in my family by far. And I don't think that Puerto Ricans in general get out much because it's a very small island of limited means. Usually the people that do have money maybe won't necessarily travel too far. My grandma, when I did an internship during law school in Australia, she asked me if Australia was right next to London, and I was like, yeah, Grandma, it's right there, because it's just explaining to her it wasn't going to get across. So I think it's wonderful that I have this kind of new exposure to the world that maybe my family or my predecessors before me haven't had, and the ability to kind of spread the word about the island, which after the Despacito song that hit all of the Billboard charts, people really started to put Puerto Rico on their list. But still, I think compared to other islands in the area like Cuba, everybody knows Cuba. But Puerto Rico, it's a little bit harder for people to be aware of it, know what it has to offer, and actually plan a visit there. So I love the island. I go back all the time. I was actually just there in August, right before the hurricanes hit in September of 2017, and I was just there. I went actually that was my first time going to Vieques, because Puerto Rico has an island next to it called Vieques that used to be under military occupation and has since been freed of that and is really trying to find life of its own, but it has a lot of natural wonders. So I went there just to kayak the Bio Bay, which is a bioluminescent bay that lights up with all the creatures in it as you kayak above it. And they have these glass bottom kayaks, so it's like you're kayaking on stars essentially. You have to plan your visit during the new moon, so that or the full moon, new moon, so that there's less ambient light, so it's darker and that you'll see it brighter. But it's one of the few bio bays in the world. They actually have another one in Fajardo as well, which is on the actual mainland of Puerto Rico. Vieques is about a 30-minute kind of perilous Jurassic Park plane ride out there. But it's well worth the visit, and it's one of those places that has so much to discover. Puerto Rico itself has more than 2,000 caves. They're still discovering caves. They have a lot of Indian hieroglyphics that you'll see if you go hiking down into them. They've been the site of many movies. Pirates of the Caribbean, The Goonies were filmed in Puerto Rico. So it's a beautiful place. It's under American rule and funding. So since it's a territory, it has...
Only you don't get to vote. The people of Puerto Rico don't get to vote in the American election?
Yes. Well, they have their own governor, and so yes, it's a little bit of a tricky field. And there's been referendums done to see, do they want to join as a state? I personally think that I think having 51 stars would just throw off the whole flag. I think that's been the main reason why it hasn't caught on. But we are born as citizens, so we do have the right. If I wanted to run for president one day, I certainly could. I believe John McCain was actually born in Panama, and it's a similar story. Just since it's a territory, you have that ability to run, but no, not necessarily to vote or have representation in the Senate or anything like that.
Your blog is called Jenna on a Jet Plane. Tell me about what people can find there.
So my blog is about 3 different things. I have travel tips, so based on the book, how you can get cheap flights, what are some misconceptions while you're traveling about affordable travel, just general tips and strategies, especially for solo females. And also I have destinations, so a lot of the places that I've found, like the Unicorn Cafe in Bangkok, which is so not a typical activity, but it's like the happiest place on earth. None of the locals go there. It's only tourists, but it's all filled with unicorns, like a Lisa Frank folder that just blew up. And
so happier than Denmark?
I don't know about that. Denmark's pretty happy.
Carry
on. But it's really hard to not be happy when you're surrounded by rainbows and unicorns, like literally all around you. And you're eating rainbow cake, and it's just, I spent like 5 hours there. I think the average visit on Google was an hour, and I was there all day. Like, this is the best place ever. So that was and those are some of the destinations that I find. I also do some off the beaten path destinations. I went off the swing, off the edge of the world in Ecuador. That was the impetus for going to Ecuador. And that had gained popularity through a National Geographic photography contest where it won, I believe, an honorable mention. And then people saw like this picture of somebody swinging, over an active volcano with what looked like an abyss underneath them. And that attracted a lot of people. It's one of the ways that I guess Instagram can really influence and put a destination on the map. And so since then, there's actually been a lot of swings. The original one is called Casa de Árbol, which is just like treehouse in Spanish. But there have been a lot of swings that have popped up to try to mimic that same concept since they've seen what a draw it's been. It's drawn so many people to this little town of Baños, which is known for adventure and actually has more adventure activities than like Costa Rica or New Zealand at a third of the price. And people didn't know about it until they saw this picture, and now it's really become an adventure tourism destination. So those are some of the destinations I write about. And then I also have travel stories because I've had some very interesting things happen to me while abroad, from losing my wallet in Mexico and rental car keys and having somebody actually take a ferry back from Isla Mujeres to bring them back to me with everything still in it, to having an opera stopped halfway through in Florence and then them saying, we want to announce a change in program to dedicate a song to a very special lady in the front row. And I'm like staring wildly around me, like, who are they talking about? And then they start singing right to me, and I'm just like, oh my goodness. So I've had some really wonderful stories, and I think that interests people, both the good and the bad, because they're all part of traveling.
So is the blog, is that your job now? Is that funding your travel and your life?
Somewhat. So the ebook is helping to fund my travels, and it's not even an ebook. I should stop referring to it as that because I did publish it in paperback.
I saw that.
And I worked very hard to do that.
Now it's a real book.
It is. It's a real boy. So I did, and I had it published for a few months before I went out to paperback, but there really is something different about having a tangible product that you can feel, that you can pass out to people, that they can see.
I remember when I wrote a book about radio and I had it in my hand for the first time, it just felt like, okay, this is a book.
It's amazing.
And it made a sound when I put it on the table.
Yes. I kind of slept with it on my bedside for like the first couple of nights after I got it. I woke up, I was like, good morning, book. So it's really wonderful. And it's not easy as a self-published author to take those steps and figure that out. So I was very proud of that, and that is one of the methods of income. When I started this, I started teaching English online to supplement my income, because even though I was an attorney, I worked at a nonprofit law firm, so I was on a limited salary, and I needed, as if you're traveling all over the world, I just needed something to supplement that, and that's when I started teaching English online, which I still do currently, but I'm hoping to phase out now that I'm devoting more time to doing this full time to make more income off of my blog.
So what's the future gonna bring? When I see you in a few years' time, where are you then?
So I'm just going to put it out there into the universe and hope that, thoughts and words become things. I would really love to be a New York Times bestseller of a type of memoir for the 12 trips in 12 months that I took, and how women can redefine what it means to be alone, and as opposed to having it be something where you're constantly worrying about what you're lacking, really finding the joy in having the freedom to discover new places, meet new people, because you're able to move. I mean, I'm unencumbered by pets or plants or children or anything like that. I can go anywhere at any time. So it's, how do you make that moment in time something that works for you, as opposed to something where you're always kind of hoping to get to the next goal and thinking that happiness is waiting for you there. So I'd really love to put that together in some kind of memoir, kind of a mix of like Gretchen Rubin's The Happiness Project and this one book that's very controversial title. It's called What I Was Doing While You Were Breeding. Sometimes just the controversial titles, they bring in people. And so I'd like it to be kind of a mix of those two, so that people can take the challenge onto themselves, but also find that there's ways to redefine what maybe traditionally looked at as a period of time that you're hoping to fast forward through.
So you don't have the typical plan of being a white bride and a lot of kids running around?
I wouldn't be opposed to that one day, but I don't foresee that in my immediate future. I definitely want to be, a pretty princess one day in my wedding dress. I think every woman does. And I'd love to have that be an option for the future, but I'm not going to live my life defined by that, thinking that if I haven't had that now, that I need to have that right away. There's a lot of women, I think, that get married more for the wedding than the husband. I definitely want the husband. The wedding's one day, the husband you got to deal with a lot longer. So I'd much rather wait for the right person.
In the old days, you would say for life, but not ananymore.
Much longer.
Much longer.
Until something do us part. No, but I'd want to be with the right person, not just get married for the sake of taking pretty pictures. I think you can go and take a solo photo shoot around the world and get those same pretty pictures and that same sentiment and feeling like a princess without having to spend that much money on something that you're not really interested about the person you're committing to.
Cool. I'm so glad that we met, and I'll see you in a few months in upstate New York.
I can't wait. I will see you there.
Join me tomorrow when I speak to one of the most experienced people in the business. His name is Gary Arndt. My name is Palle Bo. See you tomorrow.